I'm going to now call upon Positive Vibration, which is a foundation of hope for the girls, and they will render the I Am an African and a gender-based violence awareness item. Over to you.
I am an African. I am an African. I am an African. I owe my beings to the hills and the valleys, the mountains and the plains, the rivers, the desert, the trees, the flowers, the seas, and the ever-changing seasons that define the face of our native land. I owe my being to the koi and the sand, who desolates, souls hunt, the great expanses of the beautiful cape, they who fell victim to the most merciless genocide our native land has ever seen, as they were the first to lose their life in the struggle to defend our freedom and independence, as they who, as the people, perished in the results.
I am formed of the migrants who left Europe to find a new home in our native land.
Whatever their own actions, pa! They remain still part of me.
Pa! Ooh-ah! Ha 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 ha! Pa! Ooh-ah! Ha 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 ha! Pa! Ooh-ah! Ha ha ha!
In my veins courses
the blood of the Malay slave who came from the east. Their proud dignity inform my pennies.
Pa!
Their culture.
Pa!
They're part of mine.
Pa!
They're part of my essence.
They strive, they bore on their bodies. From the lash of the slave master, I a reminder indulge on my consciousness of what should not be done, of what should not be done. Warrior, patriot,
soldier,
Insansi Kukune, Tata and Pep,
Mushasha and Gubunyani.
I am the grandchild of the warrior and man and woman that Insansi Kukune led. The patriot that Tata and Pep took to battle.
The soldiers that Mushasha and Gubunyani taught never to dishonor.
The cause of freedom.
My mind and my knowledge of myself is formed by the victories that are the jewels in our African crown. The victories that we earn from Esandran to Carlton, as the Ethiopians, as the Ashantis of Ghana, as the Bedouins of the deserts.
I am the grandchild who lays fresh flowers on the Boom Crate and St. Helena in the Bahamas, who sees in the mind's eye and suffers the suffering of a simple peasant farm. Death, concentration camps, destroyed homesteads, a dream in ruins. I am the child of Nongawuzi. I am he who made it possible to trade in the world's markets, in diamonds, in gold, in the same food for which my stomach yearns. I come of those who were transported from India and China, whose been resided in the factory that they were able to provide physical labor, who taught me that we could both be at home and be for rent, who taught me that human existence itself demanded that freedom was a necessary condition for that human existence. Being part of all these people, and in the knowledge that none dare contest that assertion, I shall claim that, I shall claim that I am an African. I am an African.
I'm honored to deliver this keynote address at this Women's Development Colloquium, bringing together women and men from all types of society within Africa and the African diaspora. The idea is to have conversations, to understand women in different communities and their priorities. It's intended to be inclusive and participatory, this conversation, which will help us co-create the core programs of the Thabo Mbeki Presidential Center, the Women's Development Granary itself. This center is conceived as a living, breathing institution that transcends the traditional boundaries of a museum or library. It aims to be a cultural nexus, a hub for intellectual and societal advancement, and a vibrant public space that embodies the rich tapestry of African history and its diaspora. And as you could see this morning, we own that space. We will occupy that space. We will share that space, and we will bring everyone into it. We envision the center as an innovative platform that's both rooted in the historical milieu and attuned to the evolving rhythms of contemporary Africa, functioning as a crucible where the past, present, and future merge in meaningful ways. The Women's Development Center is a place for understanding the history of African women and more. It provides both physical and virtual spaces for engagement, research, dialogue, and reflection. But before I continue in this address, I want to acknowledge and bring into this space, through a moment of silence, in solidarity of the various conflicts playing out in different parts of our continent, the Sudan and the DRC specifically. But I want to transcend a bit and go to the Middle East. And I want us to stand with the women of Palestine and Gaza. Can you please stand?
We have come far as African women. It has not all been in vain. However, freedom, as these kids were saying, remains elusive. We need to redefine it. Everything that touches our lives needs to be converted into an instrument of liberation or be thrown. If it's not an instrument of liberation, it must be thrown in the ash can of history. So I want to share a few lessons from, I can't say my journey, because from my journey and others, because my journey has been influenced by a lot of other people. But there are a few lessons I want to draw from that. One lesson I draw is that women, girls, given a chance, excel. Let me illustrate that lesson by another country. In Cuba, for instance, to become a doctor or any profession, you get points. And I like the way they do it in Cuba. They don't just look at your exam points. They talk to your classmates. Do you think she will become a good doctor? And your classmate says, she's very selfish and doesn't like to interact. I don't think so. They go to your teachers before they go to your marks. But there was a time when they had to have a 2-tier point. More points for girls to get to medical school, less points for boys. because the girls were dominating, so they realized that medical school will only be female. They had to have affirmative action for boys and give them less, admit them with less points. It's not like it's a wish that girls excel. They do, given equal opportunities. So what does that teach us? It teaches us that if we invest in girls, I'm not saying we shouldn't invest in boys. I'm just saying if we invest in girls, because many societies still don't invest in girls. If we invest in girls, we invest in society, and we'll get more return from that investment. But investing both in boys and girls, we are future-proofing your nation, because you know the future is in good hands.
My journey. The journey raises the question of who is the traveler, the girl who becomes the woman later. The answer produces 3 women who shared the molding of this individual: my mother, my grandmother, and my 88-year-old aunt, who's the only one who's still alive of the 3. The critical features that are common to what they dispensed in their parenting, molding, and nurturing role are the most dominant in what resulted in the woman Balek. They gave me the solid values of being gentle. I'd like to believe I'm gentle. Yet firm and determined, and never surrendering to temptation. They drummed it in us to respect everyone, regardless of their station in life. They were caring and protective. My father, he was the source of my identity and cultural pillar. He was also the voice of authority within the family, an undeclared but well-recognized fact of life. He brought the poetry. He was the singer and pianist of my early days who taught me songs. From the above, I present 2 rivers that flow independently, converge, and become a much bigger river as my life enters adulthood. I stayed on in my family home till the day I stepped out of it, knowing I was going to leave the country. My mother and I prayed together that day. At this point, I was a mother of a set of beautiful babies. A 17-month-old girl and a 5-month-old boy. I was married to their father, but had insisted on staying on at my family home until we had our own home. My mother and my then husband were the 2 people in whom I confided that I had to skip.
my session will be about violence and peace and security. And for me, the children who performed here this morning demonstrated exactly how history can be shared. They used so many ways to tell us the experience from way past. They started from the way back, whose children they were, whose great, they told us. And we sat there and I could hear people going, because it resonated, and history must resonate. And they performed. It was poetry, it was prose. They were giving us records, documentation. They did not only talk about what they were told. I think you heard their words. But they also made us feel. They made us feel their history and connect to it. They used their bodies, they used their voices, they used so many parts of themselves to show us the history. And that is what I hope the granary will be about. I will talk a little bit more about what we have been doing to do what you saw the children doing today, to connect history to people, to make history something that is emotive when we hear it, but also factual and documented. And I hope, my hope, when we all contribute, that is the granary that we will see, that will sprout from this ground. And because those seeds and those vegetables were not stored in one place, I hope the granary won't only be in South Africa, but will be accessible and accessed by many different people from everywhere. And we can all make a good historical meal out of it. Enjoy, cry, sing, and dance our history.
You know that you live in a city with a street called Malibongwe Drive. Malibongwe Drive. What you may not know is how it came to be called Malibongwe Drive. That street had another name in the past. You may know that the name of the street before was J.G. Stradom. And here is how it came to change. I was working at the time in the city of Johannesburg Development Agency. Some of my colleagues are here. We were doing the Randburg Renewal Project. Randburg has a particular history. All of the main streets in Randburg were named after National Party presidents. You see them. There was a Verwoerd Street at that time. There was a Stradom, and some of the others, the Forscheers and the others. And we said to the mayor, Mr. Mayor Braambi, Amos Masonda was the mayor at the time, we said we cannot renew a suburb and then say to you, Mayor, please give us budget to upgrade Verwoerd Drive or Stradom Drive. It's impossible. Allow us, please, to rename some of the streets. Mayor said, out of the 7 we presented, you can rename 2. So we said, let us rename the Verwoerd Drive and the Stradom Drive. Then we had to come up with ideas of what could the new name be. And we looked and thought hard about Stradom Drive. Who was Stradom? He was the one to whom it was said, Stradom, you have struck a rock. You, Stradom, you have dislodged a boulder. And what will happen to you, Stradom? You will be crushed. And what is the song that was sung on that occasion? The song, as we heard earlier today, was recognizing the women. The song was Malibongwe. And so we proposed that Stradom Drive be changed to Malibongwe Drive so that the echo of Stradom is still in our ear when we say Malibongwe, but we no longer say Stradom Drive. Today we say Malibongwe Drive. Malibongwe. And to me, That is the way in which women's histories can be brought to the fore. And that when we know Malibongwe Drive and its background, we know that women are not simply to be included, but women are the makers of history.
The topic I've been given takes me back to where I come from, because the people who influenced me, like Mrs. Balega has said, are people in the home. I don't know how many times people are asked, who's your role model? And they start with names out there, people they've never met, people they hear are very, very important. And meantime, there are people right in front of them who've been there, people who care for them. I heard a young boy who said, when he was asked, how do you know somebody loves you? And he said, by the way they say my name. Because the way they pronounce my name, I know it is safe in their mouth. Those are children for you. Safe in their mouth. It is extremely important also to know that when we're talking about women, we're talking about life givers. And Mauti ulimlami you sucked the mother tongue from your mother's breast. And when we talk about certain concepts about the value, the respect of women, it's often not sayable in English. Nalabo he, nalabo she, by stated in Japan. By stated. And then you think about the rhymes and the rhythms that we were taught. Imilolozelo. And so many young people today don't have the privilege of enjoying imlolozelo, the rhymes and rhythms, because the parents are getting younger and younger. And because also they go to schools where that is not part and parcel of the learning, even in kindergarten or in primary school. You got to know Humpty Dumpty. Yabon, wazo twinkle little star, wazo banabanye. Nomagutiwa. You are having the super reader program. Can you wear a costume about your favorite book? Hamugian Cinderella. Hamugian Superman. No Batman. Where are our own folk tales? You see, it is extremely important. One of my favorite libraries has got, oh goodness me, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs on the wall in South Africa in 2023. Haibo, bang hlukumeza. Especially because it's a library that I love. I spend my life preaching the gospel. Literacy. I preach the gospel of literacy. Because if we do not know how to read, what are young people going to do with these gadgets? I saw my iPad. I saw my computer. It doesn't matter what you want to learn. Even if you want to do all your sciences and mathematics, you still need to be able to read and write. Simple. So let's get our children reading and love them enough to give them an education and make sure that they feel proud by watching us, enjoying, tasting our mother tongues.
Yeah. What perhaps should be narrated in the TM Center, I propose there should be a clear reflection of women, time, and space. There's a thing about women and time. For example, I'm sure all of us here understand the phases of the moon and what that means for a woman. I'm sure most of us here understand the theory, if I should call it the theory of conceiving and pregnancy and delivery. Madam Chair, I think the library should reflect exactly that. That there's a relationship between a woman and time. Omam Nkosazana also said the institutions of a woman have been erased. The space should reintroduce the institution, and perhaps starting from where? Women who are mothers, right? But we are also the first teacher, we are also the first doctor to our children. So this is the best space where we should reflect as this institution of how we are going to teach and how we are going to heal as healers. Perhaps, maybe to conclude, Chair, we are in the time when we need to redefine, or maybe not redefine, because the inclusion comes with redoing. So we need to create the awareness. This is the time that we need to create the awareness so that we as women, we seize the moment. We need to find balance to build a social order that informs an equal man and a woman in our society.
Silos stand as single chimneys that reach high up into the sky. Both granaries and silos store grain. In certain cases, the silos will store the non-threshed grain, which still has the straw on it, while the granary will have the threshed grain without the straw. Sometimes the uses are interchangeable. The granary, on the other hand, does not have this association of separate development. The granary's principal association is with food, in which the grain is thrown into the granary together. Grains are seeds, and these seeds of knowledge in the museum are a symbolic font of knowledge growth. We plant a seed of knowledge from which we can reconnect to past indigenous identities, and continuously. This is the distinction between indigenous knowledge systems and indigeneity. Indigeneity is something we are fashioning, which is changing constantly. We can reconnect to these past identities, but continuously revisit, reshape, and fashion new identities that correspond with current and future development. For example, the avatar that we use in our self-representation on social media, for example, could be inspired by the legacy of women who have meaning for you in the present and in the past. The granary contains these seeds that are fonts of knowledge for anything from futuristic digital development to historical plant knowledge to past and hybrid future aesthetics. Past and hybrid future aesthetics. Our beauty, our aesthetics is not reified into one notion of beauty. It's a conglomeration of all that beauty, all the color from the past and into the future that we bring.